What is up guys, Ghost here, and today I'm going to be bringing you my first impressions of the new expansion coming out for World of Warcraft, Legion. Now I know this isn't really usual content for my channel, not really an RPG kind of channel, but I've always enjoyed RPGs a lot. Blizz contacted me, they said, hey, if you want to take a beta key, it would be great if you could make a video about Legion, and they didn't stipulate that it had to be a positive video. They're not paying me, this isn't a sponsored video or anything like that, but they did give me the beta key on the grounds that I would create some sort of video, and I decided to do a first impressions video. So this could be really negative, it could be positive, it could be really anything, guys. So that's the sort of mini disclaimer done there, and now comes the spoiler warning. If you are going to play Legion, you've already decided to purchase this expansion pack for WoW, you want to play through the story without any spoilers, then don't watch this video because I'm going to be showing the questing experience, the zones, a dungeon or two, and all that good stuff. So I've been playing as a demon hunter. I got up to around level 105. I stopped at that point in the beta because I didn't really want to spoil the experience when I played it in the full game. So I didn't really get to heroic dungeons or raiding or any of that endgame stuff. So most of this impressions video is going to be talking about the questing experience, the new class of the demon hunter, and other things that are changing with Legion. So demon hunters get two specs. They can be melee DPS, which I believe is called Havoc, and they can be tanks, which is called Vengeance. I only played as DPS, I didn't bother tanking because I was kind of just getting used to the class. But their melee spec sort of feels like a rogue on steroids. They have insane agility, and I think really their spec is built around that. You even get a double jump ability, so whenever you're jumping around you get an extra little jump. A lot of the abilities are what you would expect. You get a stun, you get an ability to throw your warglaives from a distance. You've got lots of melee abilities, you know, single damage abilities, AoE abilities, which is on my number 2 key there, where you sort of just slash around like a crazy mofo. But you also get these demon fell abilities that you can use to your advantage, where you basically just become a demon and like breathe fire onto the enemy. You've got metamorphosis, where you can become a demon, which is one of the main cooldowns for the demon hunter. So they do have a little bit of magic ability in the mix there as well. So the story and setting of Legion is basically about the invasion of the Burning Legion for the 3rd time. So a long time ago, the Night Elves were basically messing about with magic. They had this thing called the Battle of the Well of Eternity. It split the world in two to what we now know as the Eastern Kingdoms and Kalimdor, and it created this massive rift in the ocean called the Maelstrom. Now around there was this area called the Broken Isles, which was basically where the ancient High Elves lived like thousands of years ago, and it's basically been lost to humanity for, well, all of World of Warcraft's lifespan so far. We've now rediscovered these Broken Isles, and that is the setting for Legion. So there's a lot of really old stuff. This is obviously a place where some of the oldest High Elves in the game used to be. You're even going to get to visit places where Malfurion, Illidan, and Tyrande Whisperwind, where they sort of grew up as kids. So there's going to be a lot of really old lore, so if you're really interested in that rich story of World of Warcraft, it's probably going to be an interesting expansion for you. As you can see, we've got really prominent characters like Ysera, Cenarius. It's all going down, man. It's going crazy here. So Gul'dan is back again. He's up to his old tricks, and he's trying to summon, well, he has summoned the Burning Legion into Azeroth once again, and they're trying to summon Sargeras, of course. So as usual, something's gone wrong in each zone, and in this particular zone of Val'sharah, the Emerald Dream has been corrupted into the Emerald Nightmare, which is something we've heard so much about through all the years of World of Warcraft lore, so it's going to be awesome to actually get to experience that via a raid dungeon. Now, one of the major differences for me here has been the real storytelling element. As an RPG player, I'm someone who really likes a good story, and I like to immerse myself in that story as much as I can. So I actually went through this beta experience reading all the quest text, which is not something I've traditionally done, but you can also see here on screen that the storytelling has gotten way better. There's way more narration, there's way more voice acting, there are even lots of cutscenes. A lot of them are in-engine cutscenes, but there are some out-of-engine cutscenes as well. I didn't really play Warlords of Draenor all too much, so I can't really say if that was in the game then. I think there was definitely some more voice acting, but they've really taken it to the next level for Legion, and for once, I felt like I was involved in the story and really immersed in all of the zones. It wasn't like in the vanilla days where you just had to go and get 10 bear skins and 5 bear flanks, and you had no idea why or what the reasoning was behind it. Every quest actually kind of feels like it has some storyline behind it now, and characters will often appear and do a little bit of voice acting just to sort of remind you of what's going on in the storyline. And each zone, as I've said, has its own sort of storyline going on. Basically, you're going around each of the zones and you're trying to save up these pillars of creation in order to stop the Burning Legion. So the questing and storyline progression of the game has definitely seen much improvement over previous expansions. But what else is new in Legion? Well, we have artifact weapons, which is a unique weapon that each class can get for each of their specs, and then they can level that weapon up. So as you go through quests and you do world events and this sort of thing, you see that bar there above my experience bar. That is my artifact power. And once you get enough artifact power, you can unlock artifact traits. So artifact traits are sort of like a separate talent system for your artifact. It will give you minor buffs to certain class abilities or abilities for your specific spec, but some of them will be actual abilities that you gain from the artifact traits themselves. So you sort of have to go through it like you go through a talent spec in the olden days to reach that specific ability. But eventually you will be able to unlock all of these different traits. Then you also get artifact relics, which are actual items that you put into your artifact weapon. I suppose they act as a little bit similar to glyphs really, so you find these throughout your travels, you can get them as quest rewards, etc. And when you put a new one in, it will like destroy the old one. So I think you get the quest line for your artifact weapon at level 100. It's quite a cool quest line, you know, the artifact weapons themselves are pretty nice. I mean, paladins get the Ashbringer, shamans will get Doomhammer, which is of course Thrall's weapon. You look like a badass, you know, the weapons look good and they are going to have customizable appearances. But that is like literally the only weapon you're going to have through the entirety of Legion. So that's just kind of weird to me. As somebody who used to be a hardcore raider, one of the biggest thrills to me was not only getting a new item, but getting a new weapon. Especially if you're like a melee DPS or something, you want this like big badass sword. You know, part of the fun of that was getting it and being like, oh wow, look how cool it looks. But if you're just gonna have the exact same artifact weapon that every other, let's say, Retribution Paladin out there has, it kind of loses a little bit of the buzz for me. I suppose they have said you're going to be able to make it look different once you've leveled it up, and I never really got to that point because I didn't hit the level cap. But I guess we're just going to have to see how that one pans out. I'm not really sure how I feel about artifact weapons yet. They're cool on one hand, but on the other side, I'm not really too fond of A, having the same weapon as everybody else that is my spec and my class, and B, not ever getting a new weapon throughout the entirety of Legion. So class halls are going to be another thing in Legion that's new. It's kind of similar to a garrison, but it's going to be for your entire class, whatever you may be playing. So I think they saw the error of their ways in Warlords when you could literally have a building in your garrison for everything and you literally never had to go back to one of the major cities to do anything at all, which kind of defeats the purpose of a MMO game, I feel. So the class halls is where you're going to be able to empower your artifact weapon and a few other things, but most of the regular stuff you're going to have to go back to the main city to do that, like transmogging your gear and all that good stuff. Which, by the way, is Dalaran. So Dalaran is seeing a comeback from the good old days of Wrath of the Lich King. The Kirin Tor is now being led by Khadgar, and he basically teleports Dalaran right next to the Broken Isles in order to assist the heroes of Azeroth in repelling the Burning Legion. And that also means that the Violet Hold is coming with it, so we're going to get another go in the Violet Hold, and apparently the Tomb of Sargeras has awakened some new bad guys within the Violet Hold that we apparently never knew about before, so that's going to be interesting to do that. I haven't actually done that one, but the dungeon you're looking at here is the Halls of Valor. This is in the zone known as Stormheim, which is basically a Vrykul zone. You may recognise the Vrykul from Wrath of the Lich King. Yet again, they were up in Northrend. Apparently a bunch of them decided to travel south like centuries ago, and they're still there on the Broken Isles. So this dungeon, Halls of Valor, has a very Viking feel to it. It's basically based on Norse mythology. It's pretty damn cool. The whole voice acting and cutscene feel to the questing experience and the story really follows through in the dungeons as well. Although it was like a little bit easy, I've never really been a fan of this casualization of the dungeons that's happened in World of Warcraft. I was always a fan of the hardcore style. For any of you guys who used to play in Vanilla and maybe Burning Crusade, where you had to crowd control individual mobs when you pulled and you couldn't just AoE the crap out of them like they were nothing. But Heroic and Mythic modes should offer up a greater challenge, and despite all of that, the story, the bosses themselves, and the artwork here is just absolutely amazing. Blizzard really have some talented artists, especially having to create art in such a dated engine now. Alright, so conclusion time. So far I've been pretty impressed with what I've seen. This is definitely the most fun I've had in WoW since Wrath of the Lich King times, and I think most old fogies like myself who played the older expansions and even back in Vanilla would probably agree with me that World of Warcraft started to slope downhill after its glory days of Wrath of the Lich King. So obviously here I'm only really speaking to the leveling up experience and the RPG experiences of World of Warcraft, but based on that I would definitely recommend picking up Legion and giving it a go. It is hands down the best leveling experience I've had in World of Warcraft in a long time. Now unfortunately I can't really comment as to how the raiding experience is and the endgame content, as I didn't get there in my limited beta tryout time. But I've decided to pick this up. I'm going to play it. How long am I going to play it for? Am I just going to hit level cap and then give up? I don't know. I suppose that depends on how enthralling the dungeon and raid content is, and also if I have time to partake in it or not. So that's it guys, those are my first impressions and my thoughts on Legion. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Cheers.